By the end of this module, you'll be able to add and remove protected assets. What assets do you want to protect? First, we start by looking at the Unitrends appliance, of course, but we can connect physical servers to the Unitrends appliance using the Unitrends agent. These servers include Windows, Linux, Mac, other operating systems like SCO, Solaris, Spark, and even NAS over CIFS or NFS connections. Now, you can also protect virtual guests that are being hosted off of virtual hosts. These include VMware, Hyper-V, and Citrix Zen Server. Now, we also have our application agents or our application databases that we can protect, which include Exchange, SQL, SharePoint, and Oracle. Now, we have to run these applications on either physical servers or virtual guests as well. Right, so we have to run a lot of different backup types, or with application aware, maybe virtual snapshots only. We're going to talk about a lot of the different combinations and how we protect all of these assets. Now, what type of protection you need for each asset really starts with your recovery point objective. That drives how often you should schedule those backups. When you look at recovery time objective, that helps you determine what type of backup and or backup copy jobs need to run for each of those asset types. Now, how you determine what backup jobs to run to meet your recovery needs. Now, the backup approach for some asset types is straightforward. For example, a NAS is CIFS and NFS and NDMP. Where we have physical servers, you can use an agent for file level backups for Windows, Mac, Linux, SCO, Solaris, all those different operating systems. Now, while other operating systems and other configurations present choices depending on your host and your implementation and recovery needs. When we look at virtual hosts or virtual guests, you can run virtual snapshots or host level snapshots and or agent-based file level backups depending on your guest and implementation and recovery needs. Once again, either or. Now, if you're running SQL and Exchange on VMware, either host level snapshots or application agent backups depending on application implementation and your recovery needs once again. And once again, you can always see the compatibility matrix for more information on the supported versions. And you want to make sure you see the backup modules for each asset type later in this course to learn how to determine which backup approach to use based on your specific needs. Now, you sort your servers and applications and data into asset groups based on the importance to simplify job management. Now, the importance scale starts with cattle or tier 3. They're not very important, loss is a hassle, and they're easy to replace. Now, you talk about pets, and they're somewhat more important. Loss is painful, and they're harder to replace. And that's your tier 2. Now, your tier 1 is more of your people. They're very important, loss is painful, and they're irreplaceable or hard to reconfigure and set back up. All right, now that importance scale then leads us to an RPO. Our cattle, our tier 3, tend to have more of a lower recovery point objective, while our pets and our people tend to lean more towards that high scale. For each asset type you want to protect, you got to figure out which group it falls into based on RPO and RTO and the job type that you're going to run across those different assets. Now, to help you figure some of this out, or create an Excel sheet from some sort of inventory management, or download from Nagios or OpsView, SolarWinds. Microsoft Service Center has management now. But you can take that initial download of all your asset names. What are the client names, the physical servers, virtual guests? Get that in an Excel sheet. Start to break down your applications, your database names. What are you running on those assets? And then start to categorize those assets based on your SLAs, your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I like to use cattle, pets, and people. All right, then you're going to take those assets and you're going to start to break down and plan your backup schedules for every asset. I like to use keywords like agent. If I know I'm going to run an agent-based file level OS backup, I'll label the schedule agent-based file level or agent-based Exchange or agent-based Oracle, all the way down through SQL. If I'm backing up VMware or Hyper-V snapshots, I'll tend to start naming my schedule with either VMware or Hyper-V. Now, you also may want to include another sheet on your Excel sheet, and in that additional sheet, you can add in details around the types of schedules that each of those schedule names is going to run. For example, here you can see the backup types, the recurrence dates and times, And each one of those schedule names happens to match up with the schedule listed in here on the previous page for each one of those assets. Okay, so it's very easy to start to plan this all out before you even go through an installation, or even to help you manage kind of a restructuring of your schedule. Break this stuff out on paper so you know the level of each asset and the times and recurrences of each backup type you're going to run across those assets. Now, when we look at adding your protected assets, the process differs and it changes and it varies based on that asset type. Once again, virtual host, depending on if it's VMware, Hyper-V, or Citrix Zen server, or the physical servers. Everything from running agents across Windows, Linux, Mac, OS, all the other operating systems that we support, or if it's NAS, running CIFS or NFS or NDMP. Now, for assets using agents, the agent installation procedures vary by operating system. Once again, see that administrator guide for more step-by-step instructions for each of those different connection types. Now, there's also application assets that are going to be auto-detected from the Windows agents or from application aware inside of VMware. And there are settings that apply for all assets. There's retention policies, encryption considerations, and there's new QS settings for the host level backups as well too. Make sure you're familiar with those, and there is a link there for the configurable features for more assets from the administrator guide for you. Now, you can add virtual host to protected assets in the UI. Once again, for VMware, you're going to add the virtual host. And to do this, you can do it a couple of different ways. You can add vCenter, and the appliance automatically detects all the VMs on all the hosts within your vCenter. Or you can add ESXi hosts individually. That way, if vCenter goes down, Unitrends can contact the host directly to perform those backup jobs. Now, also, there's application-aware settings in there too. You need to verify the administrative credentials for the Windows VM and use and enable the application VMware processing through the Unitrends UI as well too. If you're using Hyper-V, you add the asset in order to push the Unitrends agent. You're going to get in there in the tutorial, I'll show you as well too, that you cannot add a Hyper-V host without either manually installing the agent or doing an agent push, an agent install like you normally would a normal asset to push the agent to that Hyper-V host. Also, if you're running Zen server, UB deployed on Citrix Zen server, you're going to add the virtual host as an asset. And all other appliance types require you to protect Zen server guest as the Unitrends agent-based asset. You're going to register the asset just like any other Windows agent or whatever type of agent you need, Linux or whatever. You're going to register the asset like a normal asset. And you're ready to create your backup jobs. Once you tie to your virtual host, you can go in and start creating backup jobs and all the assets that show underneath those virtual hosts that you just added. When we look at adding physical servers in the protected assets area, you're going to add the asset. And for most Windows assets, the appliance can push the install agent, as we talked about, when you add the asset, if you've provided local administrator credentials. Once again, there's a link there for the asset credentials in the administrator guide for more information. Now, for other physical assets, you must install the Unitrends agent manually before you add the asset. And there's also more links there for you as well too. And Unitrends, once again, auto-detects any application assets that are running SQL, Exchange, SQL, or Oracle on Windows, and also check the Linux dependency type stuff when you're running the Linux agents for Linux Oracle or Solaris Oracle. And once you make the asset connection, you're ready to start creating your backup jobs based on those asset types that you've created. Once again, as I just mentioned, when we add the application assets, SQL, Exchange, Oracle, and SharePoint, when they're on Windows servers, they're automatically detected. Once again, there's a link there for you for more information. You're just going to install the agent. Windows only, it supports the agent push to the machine, once again through that local administrator right. And you're going to add the asset in the UI. Right. It auto-detects the applications that are Microsoft VSS supported applications. And on Oracle and Linux Solaris, just as I mentioned a little bit earlier, there is a link there for installing the agent, but you do have to install the agent manually, and then you do have to install that Unitrends dependency for Oracle on Linux or Solaris as well too. Then come back to the UI once that's installed and add the asset into the UI. Once again, once you make those connections to the assets, depending on the asset type, you're now ready to start creating those backup jobs. We talk about adding NAS in the protected assets area. The NAS does not require an agent. The Unitrends appliance mounts to the share via either a CIFS or NFS protocol and also NDMP. Now, when you're managing the NAS assets, there is a link there for you for more information. But also in the Unitrends UI, you're going to need to provide the credentials for an account with read-write access to the share that you want to protect. All right, once you connect once again to those assets for NAS, depending on those backup types, you can run those backup jobs. Okay, now establishing a retention policies by an asset. The retention policies control how long the groups are retained and the order in which they are purged. Once again, there's a link there for managing retention settings and more information. But our retention is based on backup chains. Okay, and a backup chain includes the master and all incrementals or differentials that go with it. We purge backups in groups based on their backup chain. It's very important to make sure you understand that. Now, backup groups are also purged using the FIFO, first in and first out rule, when capacity is reached. And no min and no max goals are set by default. Everything is set to 0. We try to keep as much as we can, but we're not going to send you any alerts by default. Now, you can choose to retain backups of certain assets longer than others using these retention settings. So if you know you have servers that you tend to go back and recover stuff from more 30, 45, 60 days, then you can set those asset types to that longer retention and only keep 21, 30, 40 days of other asset types. You can shift that retention around. Now, for long-term retention, you're going to make sure you have backup copies to an off-site asset or an off-site target. Right? Either hot copies or cold copies for long-term retention. Now, you're going to choose your retention settings for each asset too. We're going to go over those real quickly. There's minimum goal, which does not guarantee retention for the defined period. As new backups run, backup groups may be deleted to reclaim that space. Now, if a backup must be deleted before meeting the minimum goal, that's when you get that notification, that alert, that email. Now, maximum limits are the number of days after which the appliance will delete backups once again in that group. Backups are eligible to be deleted once the full or master has exceeded that limit. It'll purge it as a whole group once the full or master has reached that 30, 45, 60-day limit, whatever your maximum is. Now, legal hold, right, that's keep until in the UI. Now, that's the number of days backups must be retained. And you really want to watch out for using legal hold. It's guaranteed retention for so many days. Now, it works by backups that are younger than so many days are not purged for any reason, including that of the expense of new incoming backups. If you have legal hold set and you run out of room, your new backups will fail. It will not purge what you have that legal hold set for. And there is legal hold forever as well. It retains the full backup and any associated incrementals and differentials in the backup group forever. Be very careful using legal hold forever. It does affect retention. Now, if needed, it is recommended to set holds against backups, not against those assets themselves. When we look at encryption considerations, the options are to enable encryption at the asset or the job level. Once again, there's a link there for more information in the administrator guide about encrypting backups for you. And encryption impacts performance for the backups and backup copies, and it affects the performance for recovery. All right, once encryption is enabled, that asset's subsequent backups are encrypted, right? But backups stored prior to the configuration encryption remain unencrypted. If you did not set your passphrase right away, you ran some backups, then you turned it on, those backups prior to setting this are not set. Anything moving forward is set. Now, backup types that do not support encryption are the legacy MS Exchange information store backups and any data stored on the appliance via the Samba share or the NFS shares. Anything you copy that Samba share. Now, if you forget your passphrase, there is no way to recover either the passphrase or any encrypted backups. Very important to note that. Now, we talk about removing the protected assets. When an asset or host is removed, it's important to note that all the associated backups are purged. Now, before removing an asset, you need to perform a data integrity check on that backup copy. Make sure you have a secondary copy somewhere on disk or on the target before you remove that asset. Now, also make sure you remove the asset from all backup jobs. It won't let you remove an asset that is scheduled in a backup job, and that includes hot or cold jobs as well too. Once again, there's a link up there for more information on managing the protected assets. Now, when working with virtual assets, if you remove only the vCenter server, the guest itself, VM backups are not deleted unless you also remove the ESXi host itself too. It's very important to note. And VM guest assets cannot be removed from the UI only because when we resync back with VMware, they just show right back up anyways. They will not disappear from your UI until they disappear from your VMware environment or VM environment. And what's next? You want to complete the asset management quiz and watch the asset level backups lecture.